Good morning and welcome to SEN Stream. This morning we invite Claire to say hello on SEN Stream. We talk about the assessment of health. We talk about nutritional assessment. We look ahead to week 11 and to see what to expect on the modules. We get a reminder about the PTES survey and why it's important. We have a look at where you can find some nutrition specific jobs. And as always, we take questions and provide answers in the chat. Guys, welcome to episode 22. Please stay tuned. Let us know you're available in the chat and we will go from there. Guys, good morning and welcome to episode number 22 of the SEN Stream. Now, we're going for an ambitious stream this morning. We're doing it from home and we've got Claire on a Google Hangouts chat in the background waiting to come and say hello. So, first of all, let's just do the obligatories of saying hello to whoever is in the chat this morning. Now, the likelihood is there's going to be some desync of my voice and the video and all sorts of different crazy things, but I think ultimately it will work for the purposes of what we want to do today. So first and foremost though, let's say hello to everyone. Josh, good morning. Nice to see you in the chat. Evie, good morning as well. Again, if there's anybody else there, Claire is waiting with bated breath to answer all of your questions with regards to nutritional assessment. So, and I think we will take the opportunity right now to say hello to Claire. So, Claire, I'm going to invite you in 3,
Hello.
2, 1, go.
Hi, I'm unmuting myself and hoping that my computer doesn't beep too much at you while I'm talking. So really happy to answer any questions. And while I'm on mute, I'm updating my instruction document slightly just to make sure that hopefully we can include some of the questions and feedback to that on the instruction document, which I'll put up on the Blackboard site at the end of today.
Perfect. Excellent. So, without further ado, folks, well, first of all, before we carry on, Claire, we've also got Antonia who's come and said hello, and we've also got Marcello as well. Hi all. Good morning, everyone. Now, guys, the whole purpose of the first part of today's session is to make sure that you guys get your questions in with regards to nutritional assessment. So while you all sit there and panic and think, oh my gosh, what should I ask? What we're going to do is, Claire, if you could just run through a little bit of a broad sort of what you're expecting from these guys, how can they do well, different types of errors that people have made in the past.
Sure, be happy to. Okay, essentially within the second coursework for this module, you're doing a skills portfolio. And the reason behind that is that at the end of this semester, and obviously after your project, your next job is to find a job. Now, as we're starting to go forward, it's really difficult for us to encourage you to go through all the skills that you've learned in all the different modules that you're doing on the 2 courses, and to be able to show us your awareness of how those skills are going to help you to be employable. So the coursework has been put together in such a way that you're essentially writing yourself a preparatory document to be able to sell your skills as you go into any job interview. Now, I'm trying to remember how I share my screen, so hang on while I do this.
3 dots in the top.
Yeah, no, I'm just doing that. It's asking me to share my entire screen. So let me do that and then only bring up the one I want. So hopefully now you can see on your screen the assessment outline that is up on Blackboard. It is good.
It's looking fantastic.
I can do something technologically. Okay, so what we have at the start is a little bit of an introduction just to that. And the most important bit to start with is something you can all write fairly quickly. You've chosen to come and do a degree with us, which we're delighted about, obviously. But we want to know where you want to go next. So I've given you a guideline of one side, but I did mention in class and on a previous stream that if you want to write a little bit more than that, that's absolutely fine. I just don't want you to write 3 pages of background if it's not relevant. So I want you to come up with a bit of a background into who you are, why you chose this degree route, and what it is you're hoping to get from that degree. Now, essentially, that should be your cover letter. This is who I am, and this is what I bring with me into this job. So I've just added this MB in yellow at the bottom. So what I'm looking for from that is a context, a scenario from which you're going to explain why you're telling me about specific skills. So moving on from that, this is one of the sections that was done particularly badly in the past by some students. What I've done is slightly amended this section based on what you've seen in some of the examples that are up. But what we're looking for is a critical summary of the skills that you're learning. Now, we're using an ABCDE approach throughout the teaching. We've got your anthropometrics, we've got your biochemical, we've got your clinical objective and subjective measures, we've got your dietary measures, but essentially what part one, that introduction, is doing is giving you the E, the environment that you're coming from. So what I want to see in this section is that within your goal, you can tell me why working as a recreational sports nutritionist working with recreational adults or a public health officer working with Save the Children, what you're able to do is reflect on how the skills that you've learned in this module and in other parts of your course will help you to be the right person in that role. So if you're going out to sub-Saharan Africa, for example, and you identify that children have shrunk between giving them treatment for a parasite and being followed up to see how well that's worked, if they shrink, I want you to have the capacity, the knowledge to recognize that that is not anything to do with the child actually shrinking, but more to do with the fact that the anthropometric measurement of height has been done incorrectly. They maybe have measured on an uneven surface. They've maybe not checked that they're standing at full stature. I want you to show us that you understand that and you're therefore aware of the need to plan within collection of all your data. So what I want you to look at is these points down here. What skills are going to be useful for you in your chosen career? How are they going to help you in your practice? And bear in mind that might not be actually going out and collecting the skill or the data. It might be about interpreting that. And then what difficulties can you expect both in their collection and the use of that evidence so that you can inform your practice as you move forward? I do want that to be evidenced. I do want it to be scientific. And I do want you to be informed by previous research. Obviously, that needs to be relevant to your context. So getting part one done first is hugely important. Moving on, you have to give me a copy of one standard operating procedure. Now, I've given you two, and if we go into the study materials, not the study materials, sorry, this is when I was going to open all this up beforehand, into the professional portfolio in the assessment window, I've given you in the provided SOPs two different options, one for capillary blood glucose testing and one for blood pressure. So if you open these up, you'll get a bit of an idea about what sort of material I'm looking for. It should be concise, it should be easy to follow, and you shouldn't have any questions at the end of it. So all information that is needed to collect a blood pressure measurement using this device should be clear from that document. Now, you don't necessarily need an action and a rationale, but just to give you a bit of an idea, I thought it would be quite a nice structure to use. And this has come from a really good portfolio last year with a little bit of clear tweaking. So just to give you a bit of an idea about what we're expecting here. The plan is that within your work, you will use lots of SOPs to make sure consistency in your data capture. I don't want to see them all. So I want one maximum of two just to show me that you're aware of the need for professionalism and for ethics within your work and to be reactive to the type of instruction that somebody else would need to enable them to capture a technique in the way that you want them to. The final thing you need to do is a reflective summary. So bearing in mind that this is for a job, ideally, you've got a background where you want to go. You've got a critical summary of why those skills are useful for you. And you've got an SOP, so you know how to go and collect that information. What I want to see is the fact that you are aware that you are not yet expert in everything. Remember that a professional and expert is someone who's aware of how much they don't know. And I want you to show how you can develop, how you can carry on your CPD as you move forward. So, how are you going to identify your weaknesses, build on them, and really maximize your employability as you move forward? So, I think that's probably, Mike.
Yeah, still here, Claire.
Good.
Just listening.
Sorry.
Yeah, all good. So just with this SOPs thing,
Mm,
I was just thinking like some of these guys might be thinking, well, I hope to never touch an SOP in my entire life, and I hope
yeah.
that's not everyone. But like just to bring that forward and put it into the context of like professional practice and such, like if you go into an organization, the likelihood is you're going to be using SOPs. So
Hmm.
being able to actually create one and see what value those types of things can bring to the consistency to repetitive tasks is actually hugely beneficial. Um,
Yeah.
just FYI, Claire, we can't see you. So,
I know. I'm just trying to turn it back on, but for some
okay,
reason it doesn't want to.
that's all right because
I don't know what I did.
they end up
I
having
was
to look at
trying to
my
stop
face the whole
screen
time.
sharing and then I turned myself off.
Nightmare. So if you hover your mouse over the screen, you'll be able
Yeah.
to see the camera at the bottom.
Yeah.
But
I've got the camera at the bottom. It's got a line through it, but it doesn't like me. Hang on.
okay,
I'll
okay.
keep working.
We'll keep panicking. I mean, I knew this was ambitious, but streaming from
Oh,
Cambridge, having a
I think I might have. Yeah, I think I've worked it out. Allow.
excellent.
I should come back now. Yay!
Here she is. Welcome back to the stream. Right, with technical issues aside, yeah. So, think about your own professional practice in that you can use you
Hmm.
will likely use SOPs for your data collection during your project, as in you're going to be
Yeah.
using repetitive measurements as you go through anyway, and so it could be actually quite useful. And again, if you wanted to try and target the different assessments that you might be using moving forward and make it more useful for you, I can't see why that wouldn't be such a bad thing. So. Yeah.
Hmm.
And touching on the professional practice stuff,
Yeah.
sorry, as in the reflection stuff. Sometimes with the reflection, I think it's quite good if you kind of think, well, what did I previously think about this? What can I currently know about it? And what am I going to do about that information? Because if you do that, that is the true full
Absolutely.
reflective practice. So thinking back, thinking about what's going on how, and then projecting forward and going, how is this going to change moving forward? So what do you think?
I completely agree. I think from a reflective perspective, we need to think about the what. So I thought I was pretty good at doing dietary assessment, but having gone through it in class, having used it with some clients, I'm aware of how much I didn't know, how much I wasn't good at. So my what really gives me a context. I felt prepared, but maybe I'm not quite as prepared as I thought. My experience is helping me to develop that skill. But then within it, what we want to see is that we're doing something with it. So that awareness that maybe you're not quite as good as you thought you were is then about sort of moving forward from there. So then, so what? I thought I was good, but maybe I'm not quite so good. What am I going to do to get better? I've
Eh,
learned from these things. I've critiqued and reflected, and I'm going to do this. So I'm planning that development as I go through.
Excellent, good stuff. So, what types of things on that particular assessment do people tend to get wrong? What are the sort of niggly things that you read through the assessments? You think, oh, guys, I've seen this in lots of them now. How can we try and like reduce some of those things?
Sure. Well, to be honest, and this links into coursework one to some extent as well, what I'm asking you to do is to critique from a perspective. So when you are, for example, planning to work with young professional athletes, say they're in their teens, we have to be aware of what is happening within that teenage population. We need to know that they already believe that they're brilliant at everything, that they maybe haven't had to work too hard to get their A levels or their fast times or whatever else. And so, in a way, they want to be told that what they're doing is right. When you're doing a critique, we cannot expect that every single person fits into the same mold. We have to know that within that context, that there's things that may work and may not work, that there's variance in their applications. And so what I want to see is a capacity within the student responses to show that they're aware of the need for individualization and within the application of those skills. So BAM has just asked that you're choosing one professional field that you see yourselves in, and then you move forward from there. So yeah, if you're looking at, for example, as I say, working as a sports nutritionist within a group of, say, adolescent footballers, there is a personality, a capacity that they have, self-belief. They know they're going to win, and they've probably beaten everyone they've played against for a long time. They might have been picked up from various different things, and there'll be a confidence within them that you don't want to step on, but you do want them to realize, to be aware of the fact that you are giving them something to improve that skill, to help them to build it. So there's a way in terms of the communication that we need to approach here. And that should feed into the way that you design a standardized operating procedure so that you know how you're collecting that data and also how you're communicating the results of that skill or that data capture process back to those individuals to advise them. So we want a field, an area of work, but we need to be reactive to that. So in a public health setting, it might be working in policy. The policy may be on weight reduction. We know that the obesity epidemic in the UK is going up, and we know that we want to do something about it. The policy is written. We know that the policy is to get that reduction, but the implementation of that policy isn't working. We know it's not working because we're not seeing the reductions in obesity that we'd like to. So it's about using those skills to inform practice to see how we can measure trends, for example, and see those improvements.
Good stuff. Yeah. I've got Claire. You're not allowed to read the questions out. That's against SenStream rules. Okay.
Sorry,
It makes me redundant in the whole process, and it makes me feel very upset. I'm only joking. People.
sorry.
Ayana is coming with a question, Claire. She's asked, just to
Yep.
confirm, you want us to list about 4 skills, but only include 2 SOPs? Question mark.
Okay. So if you look back to the document, what I said within it, in the recommendation is not in, sorry, the guidelines is not to include 4 SOPs or not to list 4 SOPs. This really comes from the fact that I didn't properly update the SOP section of the marking rubric. So the marking rubric does say across the selected areas, it's not saying I want 4 anymore. So that should have all been updated. And obviously it's not somewhere, but I'm not even aware where it's not because I just downloaded it and I can't see 4 anywhere. I want a maximum of 2 SOPs. I only want one really. And the list, I don't want really a list. So I've said included SOP outlines, comprehensively appreciate or show comprehensive appreciation of the methods for ensuring client safety, for collecting data, and for ensuring quality in the data capture. So the SOP is just to evidence that you're aware of where we would control that sort of data capture. It is definitively only one.
So we're going for a quality over quantity approach here, Claire, just to be super
We
clear.
are
Yeah.
indeed.
Excellent. Good stuff. Thank you for your question, Ayana. Please do feel free to get in on the chat,
I can
guys.
just see it's come into one thing I can see. It says I've said fewer than 5 in one thing. So there are a couple of things I still need to update. But if you can find something that tells me where I've said 4, please let me know so I can update that.
Yeah, so if you do see any discrepancies across the way, then just please let Claire know so she can make sure that the documents that you've got are super up to date. Um, so yeah, I mean, I seem to remember last year you were asking them to do maybe about 3 or 4 SOPs. So you guys have got a good deal this year, I feel.
Absolutely. We reduced it down. So we gave you more this year. We gave you the examples, which we didn't give previously, except if we were using them, for example, in the anthropometry lab. But what we realized was that students were not really aware of what should go into an SOP. So rather than get you to do 4 and do 4 badly, we're giving you examples this year and showing that you can apply the examples within the blood pressure and blood glucose testing to different examples. So it might be a 24-hour recall, it might be I don't know, say using a CGM monitoring device, it might be taking a mid upper arm circumference, but we only need one.
Excellent. Cool. Good stuff. Is there anything else that you can think of from your experience of previously submitted assessments where you think students could maybe just try and avoid doing those things, or maybe something that you'd like to try and promote that the students do in their particular assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. In the reflections that scored worst were those who already believed that they were expert in everything and didn't have anything to learn. Um, I can tell you that the more you do, the more you learn, and the more you think, I wish I knew this a month ago. So we really do want to see your awareness of where you can gain skill. So the fact that, doing that sort of test retest focus is really key. So if you do a blood pressure and you get a bad reading, say 180 over 120, do you trust it? Or do you standardize things? Do you make sure the person's gone to the toilet? Do you make sure they're relaxed
Do you,
and test it again before
or,
you immediately send them down to A&E for a
that's
beta
it.
blocker?
Or do you ring 999 immediately? So-
Exactly, exactly.
And if you do ring
So yeah,
999,
so
what's
I'd
the
say
process?
reflection
Yeah.
is something that's
Sorry, Claire.
yeah, don't phone 911 in London. So yeah, it's in reflection. I think last year there was quite a lot of students who didn't think they had anything to learn. And realistically, we all have something that we can develop and we can gain more expertise within. So having that is really, really useful. The other thing, as I said earlier, is very, very much linked to using the critique of the tools that you're looking for. That area is broad. So that area does require you to think about all the different skills that you might need to be able to reflect on. Now, in a public health setting, for example, looking at weight reduction, you wouldn't need to know about one body mass indicator. You'd need to know about them all. Because if somebody said, but my BMI is fine, it's 22 kilograms per meter squared, you need to be able to go behind that and say, well, actually, that could still mean a high visceral fat content, and that would have a negative influence on A, B, and C.
Okay, excellent. No, good stuff. I was just going to say, just listening to some of those things like about learning and reflection and stuff like that, I think some of the biggest mistakes I've made in research projects are the things that I learned the most from, obviously, but remember. The emotional involvement of making a cock up is somewhat, it stays with you really. So yeah,
Yeah.
and if you have, I mean, you'll have once again. I'm going to do a shameless plug here, Claire, for my Research Methods for Health
Mm.
Sciences 2 session on Wednesday, which I need to give a check out for an update on that because I won't actually be physically present for it, but we've got something in the plan. But anyway, yeah, I talk about some of like the preparation of running a trial and such like that, and the likelihood is you'll have lots to reflect on during your during your research project as well. So that's what your project notebook is for. So again, the whole assessment should help line you up for that, give you some feedback ultimately for completing your notebook as well. So yeah, I mean, a little bit thin on the ground on the
Yeah.
questions front, Claire, which is maybe a
I
good thing. I
know.
don't know. Maybe everyone's feeling super confident. Maybe in the chat, guys, if you could let us know what it is that you're planning on doing your SOP on. If you're happy to share that with
Yeah.
your peers, it could be quite nice to get a nice list and see, well, what's the different cohorts doing, if there's a specific SOP that people are favouring, or maybe just to give some people ideas about what other folk are doing. That would be really nice if you're happy to share that in the
Yeah.
chat. But
Yeah.
it's sorry, Claire, go on.
We talked on Wednesday last week, and I know a lot of people weren't there, about the fact that NutriTools and DAPA Toolkit have got a really, really good list of physical activity measures and dietary assessment measures, but that is not the only skill you can use. So you could use something like the Edinburgh Warwick scale, you could use something like a diet quality index. So some of them will be quite diverse, and it's completely up to you. In the courseworks and the coursework ones, there's been some really nice skills outlined there that I'd never even heard of. So it's quite nice to see that there are different things that, there's one that was like basically like a sports bra that had something to monitor its intermittent sports, for example, and look at heart rates variability throughout a match. So things like that. If you want an SOP for something like that, it's about something that's going to be useful for you as you move forward. And obviously, I don't want you to create them from scratch. A manufacturer has instructions for a reason.
Yeah, indeed. It's only when you get into an analytical lab and realize that the manufacturer's instruction doesn't work with your own kit, and then you start banging your head against the wall. But you'll get there
Yeah,
eventually at some point. So
yeah.
is this assessment the only one that you want to talk about today, Claire? Oh, before we move on.
Um,
Oh,
we have our coursework one due back next week.
okay.
Um, I'm getting my way through the marking. Yeah, getting my way through them. There's 57 of you. I'm marking them all myself. And I am peppering them with comments so that you all get lots of feedback. I've given some very detailed feedback on referencing overall to the group. And I've spoken to a few of you, and the feedback on that has been really, really positive, just giving you that sort of specific. Um, I haven't done any negative marking on the feedback or the referencing and semester on coursework one. Some of you, however, will get this week, or sorry, next week, some really detailed, you need to deal with this. Now, I cannot stress that enough. It's not so much coursework two, where you need to get that right, but in your projects, it will absolutely impact the quality of your writing. So there's a lot of necessity for using evidence to support your facts. And so use that guideline that I've given you. And if there's anything that you're not understanding from it, please let me know. Um, the other thing that I would say from the coursework one, just as generic feedback, some of them are absolutely excellent. I've really enjoyed reading them. Some of them are struggling a little bit around making the context fit. So you've given me a scenario, whether that's intermittent fasting or management of type 2 diabetes or management of diabetes without telling me which type. There's all sorts of sporty ones as well. Now, when you're giving me the critique of the skills, you should be critiquing them within that context. Now, the same thing is absolutely true with coursework two. You have got a scenario that I want to work, whether or not it's, you've just said working with skills around diabetes control in the elderly. If you want to work in a situation like that, the elderly have got different cognitive capacity functions. Whether or not they're free living or they're living in a residential care home, for example, will impact whether their dentition is at a good level and they can eat the type of low glycemic index foods we might promote. All of those things will change the way that we would give advice. The important thing in this module or in this assessment, again, is linked to the skills. How do we collect the skills and how do we utilize the information from that skill to inform our practice moving forward is what's different about coursework one and coursework two. In coursework one, it was critique. In coursework two, it's critique, design, and application. So we need those three elements. And if you're looking at working with a specific population subgroup, you need to be aware of the reasons why that might differ slightly for them.
I suppose that kind of bounces back towards Barnes' kind of question about context, really, doesn't it? That context is kind of very key here.
Mhm.
But I mean,
Absolutely.
just before we move on as well, that Ayana, thank you very much for sharing what you plan to do, because you're the only person who has done. So thanks. If there's anybody else there who wants some ideas, then if you throw them out in the chat and tell us what you are planning on doing, or tell us if you're struggling, or if you've not come up with an idea, or you're not sure what to do, maybe we can maybe tease out some ideas from you there. But again, this kind of works when it's interactive. So do let us know what you're thinking. Excellent. Yeah. Again, Claire, if you need some help with the marking, let us know. So.
I will. Don't you worry.
So.
Now I will. I've already asked the second marker to have a look at coursework one, so hopefully that'll be done fairly quickly next week. As I say, they're not
Perfect.
taking a massive amount of time to mark, which is great. They're nice and short. But I want to very much focus my feedback. So the other thing that you might want to know as a group is that next week I will be bringing the module evaluation forums around. Now, obviously, I've spoken to a few of you before and they're like, what's the point in telling you what we think? ultimately this module is tough because some of it is relevant to different groups in different ways. Some of it probably needs to come in a slightly different place so that you have got the information before you're doing a practice. So I know the sports nutritionist told me they'd like nutritics um, before their coursework one that they did in nutrition performance, for example. Now that's a sort of adjustment that I can make to that session, feeding it into Jane's module. But if I get it from you in conversation at the end of a class, it means I have to remember it and do that. If you put it in your end of module evaluation, I've got something that's going, they said that they needed this differently. That group needs something differently to that group. If it's in there formally, it's much easier for me to argue this needs to go into that module for that reason. The SPSS session last week, I really enjoyed. It was great to get the chance to work with, obviously it was a small number, but to work directly with some of you and to talk through some of the concerns I guess you have. If that sort of advice and support is needed semester one, let us know. We can't make any changes unless you tell us what would work.
I,
And
I
ultimately, mm,
Yeah, I can't emphasize that enough, to be honest with you, that the student voice is very loud at the university, and the as long as that is captured and recorded in an official way, like the module evaluation forms, then the likelihood something can be done about it. Again,
yeah.
I can only speak for the SEN course here, but we do, like I said, the mid-semester feedback was supposed to ensure that we're not being entirely reactive, but actually, in fact, we're dealing with issues on the fly. And hopefully you've
Hmm.
seen some of those changes being brought about, which again, please do state that in your module feedback forms. So um, again, because the module feedback forms, as you would have seen in first semester, is a combination of graded responses from 1 to 5, and also the text comments. And not every single text comment that you write gets scanned into the final report that the module leader sees. Again, on the SEN side of things, we ensure that each of the different modules leaders share their SMEs, their module evaluation forms, and that the external examiner gets to see those as well. Just so that they got a very clear idea about how students experience the course, how they experience the modules and stuff like that. So essentially, rock up to the session and get your thoughts and feelings on the module down. Let us know if we've done well, let us know if you've done badly, and how we can improve things moving forwards, really. So yeah. Okay, Ayana's come in and said that she feels a bit nervous about it. If you could be a bit more specific, Ayana, we can maybe try and pick up on that a little bit. Vicky, welcome to the chat. Um, just joining you. You've missed a few questions, but nothing too drastic. Vicky, if you've got any questions with regards to the nutritional assessment, which I feel weird saying every single time that I've said it now, then do get in touch. Again, folk in the chat, please do share what it is you're planning on doing for your SOP. Again, it doesn't really matter if you state you're going to do finger prick blood sampling or using a bod pod or Seca scales or whatever. If you're going to do that, it doesn't matter if other people do that as well. So it'd be good to see a little bit of feedback as to what people are planning on doing. And we could maybe give some more suggestions. I don't know. If we have a bit of a flavour of what people are doing, then we can go with that. So Claire is going hard in the chat here, which is excellent. And again, we can get people to chip in from there. What I would say while Claire's dealing with those questions there is, if we don't get any further questions in, we're going to have to wrap it up. So this is what I would say, as we've got other things to cover on the stream today. But yeah, again, some feedback in the chat as to how people are getting on, what their issues are. If we can clarify anything, would be really helpful, really. So. This is when I sit awkwardly in silence until someone says something in the chat of any meaningful value, and we can all move on from there, really. So, feeling positive about the submissions, Claire?
I am actually. Um, it's been so interesting to see such a diverse set of skills, I guess, that are being covered within coursework one, which is great. So you're seeing that it doesn't have to be your 24-hour recall, 7-day diary, BMI measurement. People are really, really moving beyond that, and I'm clearly going to have to get technologically more savvy as I get older. Um, there's lots of electronic things that I've never heard of, not to mention Game of Thrones and all sorts of different things that I have no idea about. So that's been really fun to read. Um, but yeah, I am feeling positive about it. I think the engagement in class is very much linked to career intentions. This is what I want to do. I want to work with an undernourished population, but within the UK, I want to work with these sorts of groups. I don't know what I want to work in, but this is what I'm really enjoying. And so, in a way, as a student, you're here to see how broad our field is. And because we've merged the two groups together, that breadth is actually even bigger than you might realize. So if you imagine, for example, in with publics with a developed country focus, and often we're linking how much we can do at low cost and very easily with exercise, as opposed to huge numbers of barriers with diet. And so there's a lot of overlap there. And I think Anthony, I think, was one of the ones that really, really struck me. In the first week, he immediately went over to the exercise group, and I was like, whoa, very much public health, immediately moving over there. And I think increasingly that is happening. There's more discussion between the two degree groups and more awareness of how you can benefit each other, which I think is fabulous. And a reactivity to what's already happening. So, one of the articles I read this morning was looking at growth charts, for example, and looking at a growth chart as a mum, a new mum, or new parent. They're scary. They're really seriously scary because I don't know where my child is. I don't know where he's supposed to get to. And I was told by my health visitor that my son was fat. He was exclusively breastfed, and I was told he was fat. So clearly, I've got gold top, and it's all good. But I ended up getting into a debate within a group of new mums, obviously hormonally, God knows, loaded. But in a way, this portfolio gives you the evidence behind argument. So for me, I said, do you know where the data comes from? And here my kids were born before the update of the growth curves. And she didn't have a clue. So being able to turn around and say to somebody, this is old data from the 1940s and 50s, things have changed. The way that our bodies are comprised is different. It's not where you are on birth. It's where you become quite quickly after birth, and then whether or not you stay on that trend that is important. And being able to use the science at that point to inform my argument and my, mama bear frustration was incredibly useful. She never ever called my child fat again, and he's still on the 85th or whatever percentile, but for both height and weight. So where was the problem? What
Oh,
you're trying to do within our courses is inform your argument. And if you want to argue, if you need to argue, you need to be evidence informed. Otherwise, you're going to lose the argument. And I like winning.
I would I would love to have been the fly on the wall in that conversation, Claire, but then I feel like I would have also been terrified at the same time. So,
I think
yeah.
a lot of people.
I mean,
She retired soon afterwards. I felt
oh
quite
God,
guilty.
imagine you were the last pregnant lady that came through a clinic, and you left her with that legacy that she's a fat shamer essentially. So, Eddie was on the 97th percentile since birth, and then he dropped down to 92, and he's still a bit of a chunky monkey actually, but he's quite long as well. But there we are.
I I love it. When they get bigger, when they get sick, they got something to fight back from. And my youngest is on the 99.8th for weight and the 97.6 for height.
He's
No,
a
I'm sorry, but
tank.
there's nothing to be worried about for that. It's great. I've got a proper, he's solid. It's good.
That's good. I mean, again, with talent identification pulls into this, Claire,
Mm,
just to keep the SEN stream, topical, as it were. Because lest we
needed.
not forget, the GPHN students are guests here today, and whilst we're all happy to share
Absolutely.
ideas, that we are still bitter rivals. So, but to bring it back onto the the sport and exercise sort of pathway. Yeah, talent ID, working with youth athletes, all that kind of carry on where those
Yep.
things start to play an issue. I mean, granted, we're not going to be picking out 1 and 2 year olds from the crowds and turning them into athletes. There's a lot to happen between now and then. But 15, 16 year olds take things pretty seriously these days, from my own experience and from looking
Yep.
at what's going on around us. And you mentioned to people you're a sport and exercise nutritionist, and they turn around and say, "Oh, my son plays football, or my daughter plays rugby, or whatever," and I really want to know what I should be giving them during the half time and
Yep.
stuff. And I'm sat there like, as long as they're well fed and they're enjoying themselves, that's the first bit. Everything after that, let's just wait a little bit. I think from there really. So right, guys.
Yeah. No,
Sorry, Claire. Go on.
I do agree. I think it amazes me when you watch pitch side what people are feeding their children, and there's not bananas coming out of rucksacks anymore. It's Haribo's. And there is a huge scope for improvement there. And almost, although we've got the sort of sports performance outcomes that we really want to promote at those young levels, a lot of it is exactly the same advice as we give as a public health nutritionist, as a sport nutritionist as well. And I think we really need to emphasize that as we go through, particularly in early years.
Excellent. Right, guys. If you have a burning question that you have not asked yet, it is now absolutely the time to do that. Because I think we're going to call it a day with Claire, and I'm going to again continue
No
on with the
worries.
stream as we would do normally. So, again, if you're sat hovering over enter to ask a question, press the button, and then we can all kind of just get some things. So, here we go. Hannah Buckland. Hi, Claire! Exclamation mark. I'm looking at the policy advisor role. So the scenario I'm thinking of is using NDNS National Diet and Nutrition Survey data to inform the next chapter of the Childhood Obesity Plan for Action. Excellent. Thank
I
you for
love it.
sharing, Hannah. Jeez. Oh, so I would be looking at the nutritional assessment methods that go into the NDNS survey. So for the SOP, I'm thinking of doing a 4-day estimated non-weighed food diary.
Okay. I think, Hannah, that sounds like a really, really good idea in terms of the SOP. What you'd need to think about within the second part is looking at how all the different skills need to fit together in a policy like this. So when we're looking like a plan for action, we need to think really, really carefully about the fact that a study like the NDNS or NHANES or any of those population surveys, they've got dietary data, they've got biochemical data, they've got anthropometric and exercise data, and each of them individually tells us something. But what we need is to be able to take that individual bit of data and use it to help us with our interpretation of the other parts. So if you have an individual who is in their 4-day estimated diary not eating very much, we might need to think alongside, say, a biochemical marker or a urinary analyte, is that data complete? Are they telling us really truly what they ate? So it might be about thinking, I need to make sure I've got a biomarker in there, maybe just something like nitrogen to validate our protein intakes, or sodium. Obviously, we don't do that terribly well from a dietary assessment. The other thing you might want to consider is whether or not a 4-day estimated diary is appropriate, dependent on the age of those children. If they're 4, whether or not you're going to know what they ate at school or when they went to their mate's house is very, very difficult. So sometimes it won't be as precise as you might want it to be. So within the SOP, brilliant to have that desire. What you'll be thinking about is being able to give that resource to a parent to complete. It won't be given to a researcher to take to the child and to fill out with them. It'll be to give it to the mum and make sure that she can do it, or the dad, and make sure that they can do it. So it's very much about getting the language right, but also in your critique and in your reflection, how you would back that up. So how you would know that the data you've got is complete and accurate, and how you would utilize it if it's not. So if there was, for example, estimate of underreporting from the nitrogen balance work, then what would you do to go around that? How might you go back and validate your method of data capture, and use, for example, some of Wendy Reardon's work at the University of Dundee to see how they've done that with kids up there. So some of the work from that will really require you to think, how do I find errors? How do I preempt them? So it might be inclusion of a series of pictures. You know, you may have forgotten to report these over the last 4 days. How many times has your child consumed biscuits, fruit juice, um, sweeties, whatever it might be, apples, yogurts, things that you might easily forget. So just think about different ways that you can add on, build on those existing processes to make sure that you've got a validation check and you end up with data that will help you.
A very comprehensive response there, Claire. That was excellent. I used to, just to pick up on this, I used to work on NDNS in my previous life. So I was privy to the conversations that the dietary assessment team used to have with regards to diet diaries that they got in from parents and from people who were selected as part of the survey. And it is definitely resonating very loudly with lots of things that Claire just said there, because you're challenged, you've almost challenged by the fact that you want to get an accurate representation of a child's intake, but that's got to come through the filter of the parent, of which the parent may not want to share exactly what their child is eating. They might want to share what they would hope their child is eating, or what they think their child is eating, as opposed to what they actually are consuming. And similarly, so NDNS, the stack of SOPs that cover and governance their thing was probably the size of my hand. And again, I was privy to seeing a lot of those as well, which was interesting. But again, the biggest challenge that the dietary assessment team faces on NDNS is when there is vagueness in the dietary responses. So they'll say what the food is, but they won't give any portion size. They won't give a brand. They won't give what time of day. And essentially, it then becomes a case of, well, what's the best case scenario for the situation that we've been presented with? And they do the best with the information they have. Essentially, that's what it kind of boils down to, really. So it sounds like a good idea, Hannah, and it sounds like something that would be very applicable to a population level study as well. So yeah, good job. Thanks for sharing. Now, is there any? Oh, Claire. Claire's just sorry. I read that as somebody else,
I'm
not
just
you.
adding more feedback to Ayana's point from earlier because I was talking.
Oh, fair enough. Again, please, if you want to share what you plan to do and you want me and Claire to have a bit of a natter about that, I'm happy to do that. But if nothing does come in, we will wrap it up. So there's the ultimatum, is what I would say.
I will keep an eye on the chat once I go off camera. And I will keep responding, but obviously you can still use the discussion board on the Blackboard site. And remember that on Wednesday next week, while you're doing some work in the tutorial, I will be there to look at anything you've started to pull together. So if you've brought your scenario or you've brought I don't know, say some of your critique together and you're wondering whether or not you've got enough evidence behind it, you can always bring that with you and ask me some questions in class. So the plan will be that while you guys are working on things that I've set for you, I will be sitting at a desk and anyone who wants to can come over and have a short conversation with me, look over anything you've done and guide you obviously on that. And I will be keeping a note so that I don't see the same person 8 times and nobody else.
Excellent. Thank you, Claire. Marcello said, I had to cut out. That's fine. Well, it's recorded. Yes, it's recorded. I will place a link to the video. I'll be honest and say, guys, that my computer is probably about to set on fire because of what we're asking it to do today. But so it might be a bit choppy, but the sound should be pretty good, I think. So yeah, anything you want to follow up on will be available after that. Right, Claire, I'm going to call it. Okay.
Okay.
If you want to lurk in the background
well,
on the chat, that would be
you.
excellent.
Good luck with it all.
Yeah.
And I'll try and log in so I can listen to you now instead.
Oh, goodness. Right. Thank you very much, Claire. Again,
no worries.
Thank yous to Claire in the chat if we can. We're going to carry on with SenStream from this point onwards, but we will say goodbye to Claire. Goodbye, Claire. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.
No worries.
Have a lovely weekend.
Cheers.
Cheers. I'm fairly certain she said you two there, and I'll take it. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. Let me just resuscitate my computer a little bit so that we can all get back on track. Excuse me. I have the chat open here. Weirdly, actually, I don't know why it's there, but let's bring it up a little bit. So you guys can just see questions coming in there. Again, good luck with the assessment is what I would say. It's a tricky one to get your head around, but I think if you follow Claire's clear instructions, you just make sure that you're on top of it at all times, you should be grand. Again, use the help that's available to you. Get yourselves on the discussion board and get the questions asked. As Claire has already pointed out as well, she will be kind of cruising around in the background on the chat as well. So if you do have any questions that pop up, do let me know. Now, as I said, we are now going to transition back into what we do every single week here on SEN Stream. So GPHN students, I do talk about research methods for health sciences too, and I will give some updates from Claire with regards to nutritional assessment if you want to hang around for that, but it is SEN specific. So you are welcome, but at the same time, you might find some of it a little bit pointless. So if you want to watch, that's absolutely great. But we are now going to transition over to SEN Stream proper from there. So let me just get rid of this chat window and we will get the standard slides open from there. Don't know why this chat window is open. It's a bit strange. There we are. Remove. Yes. Excellent. Okay, let me get some slides open and we'll go from there. And obviously you can't see them. Here we are. Perfect. So we're moving into week 11, guys, which is staggering. You've done an entirety of semester 1, and now we're pretty much completing semester 2, which is it's astonishing to think that, you know, we're this far through the semester. So I'm going to kick off with the module updates, and then we will all just kind of make our way through from there. So we're going to start with advanced performance nutrition. So as we know, everyone has now shared their video links. Now, I know if Jamila and Shavazier are both watching, I've now got your videos and I can see them both as well, which is excellent. I think I'll let you know that on email, but just in case I didn't, hopefully you can pick that message up now. But looking ahead to advanced performance nutrition, I just to point out that if you did submit your formative assessment, the feedback was returned with a week to go. So don't get it mistaken, guys. Smash that out as best as I possibly could. I know Ed Stoliday, you want to have a quick meeting with me just to follow up some bits. And again, if anyone who has got feedback on advanced performance nutrition assessment, then please just let me. If there's any feedback that you're not quite sure about, or you want a little bit of a follow up. Just let me know and I can then try and follow up with you directly. Looking ahead to next week, we have a session with Dr. Emanuela Volpi. She is from the biomedical sciences section of the university, and her expertise is in genetics. And I've asked her to take that expertise and turn it to put it through a lens of sport and exercise nutrition, nutrigenomics, nutrigenetics, so that you guys can find out a little bit more about what I personally believe is the kind of future direction for sport and exercise nutrition moving forward. So being able to actually identify unique genetic characteristics of individuals and try and exploit nutritional interventions to ensure that those guys, so those athletes respond in the way that you want to do. Some of you will be aware of a research project that I'm currently doing with last year a master's students, and this year has been carried on with some undergraduate students, looking at the CYP1A2 gene and its association with caffeine metabolism. So we know that you either have a single nucleotide polymorphism which predisposes you to metabolizing caffeine either quickly or slowly. But what impact? We know that caffeine impacts on performance, but to what extent depending on which polymorphism you have. So it can be a good one to but the session will be excellent. The feedback that we get is usually pretty good because it's a look into a world that you guys just don't get enough access to, I believe, at this stage. So get yourselves down to the session. I think attendance wasn't great last week, so especially the second half of the session, I saw a lot of people disappear, which is a shame, really. So please make sure you get yourselves down to the session, and we can all get involved from there. As Claire is doing next week, I will also be handing out the semester module evaluation forms. So please, again, I will get Ted and Evie to give me a hand with doing that sort of stuff. So they'll be taking the envelope, distributing the questionnaires to you guys, and then you'll give your opportunities to give some feedback on the module as a whole. So I'd be really keen to find out what you guys think. Again, I get a report afterwards, after the fact, once all the responses have been recorded by the university, to find out how things have gone. So if you want to be able to give your opinion, please, you need to be physically present at the session to be able to do that. So make sure you get yourselves down to the session and onwards from there. Hopefully, you have all got access to your partner's client consultation video. I know some of you struggled with actually getting the video across to me. But nevertheless, I think everyone is on the right page now. So please do keep chipping away at the assessment. Make sure you've got your logs sorted out as soon as you can. For those that you got the formative assessment, again, try and pick up on some of the feedback that I've given you with regards to how to structure that log, the amount of detail that you need to give, and all that sort of stuff. I likely next week would take the opportunity to have I'll do like a Q&A session, but with myself, with regards to the assessments for advanced performance nutrition. So you guys, I've got another opportunity to ask some questions moving forward. So, excellent. We're getting some thank yous in the chat for Claire as well. I'm not sure how delayed we are today, but running the stream from home is always a unique experience, is what I would say. But let's move it on to the next module. Excellent. Nutritional assessment with Claire. We've got her updates here. Claire always gives me loads of information here, so I'm just going to pop this up onto the big screen so you guys can see it. Obviously you can't see it. Just give me 1 second while I get rid of this. Perfect. And let's just get rid of that one. Excellent. Okay, so Claire has maybe I should have got Claire to do her own updates, but never mind. We'll persevere on. We have a blank in the calendar. We had Justin, unfortunately, had to cancel his session. So Claire is going to fill that in with what she had planned for week 12. So the plan is, it's inspired by some of the content for the Coursework 1 articles, and it aims to inform your completion of Coursework 2. So building off the back of today's Q&A session, I think it would be hugely beneficial for you guys to get yourselves down to this session so that you can start applying some of the skills to that assessment. So there's several skills that are used in nutritional assessment and are shared as case studies during this particular session. So your task will be to read, review, and critique some of those against a series of questions that Claire has posed. And meanwhile, Claire is going to be circulating around the room just to follow up with anyone who either wasn't watching the chat live today or has any additional questions to ask with regards to Coursework 2, just so that you can get a little bit of feedback on how you're moving forwards and how it's all going. Now, I am actually in the way of this final bit. It says here that you will be feeding back your critique and perspectives to the group for discussion. So be prepared to stand up and say something intelligent about the case studies that you've looked at. And then also the discussion will be guided and directed by Claire, just to show you how the reflections and critique can be built into your assessment to maximize your grade. So again, a very holistic kind of hands-on learning by doing kind of session there for a nutritional assessment, of which you will get benefit from if you get yourselves into that session. So Claire made some references there to a bit of a poor show on attendance front, particularly for the SPSS session, which is baffling to me. Simply because you guys, the likelihood is you're going to be using SPSS later on down the line. So the more exposure you get to using that program, the better it's going to be. And again, as I've said on the stream before, I'm fairly certain Claire has the SPSS logo tattooed on her somewhere because she is so talented at using the program. So get yourselves across the session, make the most of the session so you can apply it to your courseworks moving forward. I'm just going to get the chat open because I just closed it down. Lots of thank yous in the chat to Claire. Thank you very much for doing that, Claire, once again. And Ayana, bye, Mike. Goodbye, Ayana. It was nice to have you, and thank you for sharing what you were planning on doing for the coursework. That's excellent. Let's move it on to assessment of health and fitness. So Jane has very kindly sort of said some nice words here as well. So we've got good work at having a go at doing an impromptu presentation yesterday morning. She knew that you weren't expecting it. So well done for having a go, and I hope you found the peer review useful. So Do let me know if it was useful in the chat, so I can pass that feedback on to Jane. I know Jane watches SEN Stream as well to keep herself up to date with what's going on across the board, which is great. So looking ahead to next week are your assessed presentations. So apparently you all know now which room you need to be in and where and who your assessor is going to be. Jane is going to circulate the schedule with everyone's time slot on. However, she would like everyone to be ready for a 10 a.m. start. And just to be clear, just to follow up on some of the Q&A we did with Jane last week, she will open up 2 separate Turnitin links for consumer summaries and one for your presentations as well. Please upload them before 10 a.m. on Thursday the 4th, so you've got a few days left to do that, and bring your presentations along on a memory stick on the day so that you can then churn through the assessments moving forwards. So any questions with regards to that stuff, you're probably best bet to go and speak to Jane directly. But other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward. Feel free to watch the video back if you needed to follow that up specifically. Okay, we're going to move on to Research Methods for Health Sciences 2. Now, some updates here directly from Teddy himself. So Teddy is going to be running the first session on Research Methods for Health Sciences 2. And he's going to take the opportunity to work through the G-Power software, which you looked at in week 4. So again, he's asked you there to just maybe refresh yourself on what it means to do power calculations, the software, make sure you have available to it, so that you can then sort of follow the guidance moving forward. He's also asked you to take the opportunity to familiarize yourself with the software and application and also calculating sample sizes. The G-Power software is a technical piece of software is what I would say. It doesn't have the kind of user-friendly interface like a Google program would have, for example. So if you're not familiar with it and you're going into this session cold, that's going to be quite challenging. So make sure you do a little bit of prep work ahead of that session before you come. He's also asked you to take the opportunity to revise a topic on t-testing and ANOVAs using last semester's lecture notes, including the SPSS tutorial sheets. And finally, he's asked if you could take the opportunity to have a little bit of a read around linear regressions and how to create one using Excel and SPSS. Moving that on, I have a bit of an announcement to make, which needs to be followed up with an official announcement on the Blackboard site. But unfortunately, I will not be physically present to do the session on the Wednesday afternoon next week. Unfortunately, my partner has a hospital appointment that she cannot miss. And unfortunately, we don't have any childcare options around here other than each other. So it's my turn to make sure that our son is sorted out for that day. So I'll be taking that day as an annual leave. But please be advised, I plan to pre-record this session in the SENstream studio. So the quality will be excellent. So that you guys can watch the session live. Well, it won't be live, but watch the recorded session during the timetabled slot, but I will also make it available ahead of the session and after the session so that you guys can either watch it beforehand or afterwards, so that you've got access to that content. So you could either go to Teddy's session and then have a bit of a break before you have nutritional assessment in the afternoon, which is probably not a bad move, or you can go treat the session as you would do normally. Teddy's going to be on hand to load the video and it will play live in the lecture theatre, so you guys can see the content when it is you're supposed to see it. What am I going to be covering in that session? So a lot of you will be thinking about how you're going to be setting up a research project moving forward. So I take the opportunity to have a little look about and provide you with a little bit of advice about how to set up a research trial. So reflecting on some of the experiences that I've had, some of the things that I've learned, and passing on some best practice techniques to you guys and some best practice methods to ensure that you hit the ground running when it comes to your research project. So I would say it would be a valuable session for you guys to watch. You don't necessarily need to be physically present in the session to do that, but you will be played live on the Wednesday on the Wednesday from whenever it is 11:45 to 1 o'clock. So get yourselves across to the session if you're not going to be able to watch it other than in that session. But if not, it will be available before and after that anyway. If anyone's got any questions with regards to that, please feel free to ask them in the chat and we can go from there. Claire, I don't know if you're still watching, but Vicky's asked a couple of questions with regards to the coursework on nutritional assessment. So if you hear this and pick it up, that would be excellent. I am going to move it on though with regards to the stream and the content moving forward. Now, dissertation watch, keeping you on track, or KIOT as I like to call it. For everyone who's got a Part B ethics, hopefully you've now submitted that, and your supervisor, if they felt that your application was sufficient enough or could be considered for ethical review, that has been passed on to the ethics committee. So that is next Monday. I believe it's between 10 and 1, but it will take a little bit of time for the ethics committee to come to a decision about your research projects and then give you an outcome from there. But I know it's next Monday. The reason I know is because I've been invited to come along to just clear up any lack of clarity issues with regards to some of the more specialist topics. So I will be there to see some of your projects come through. I won't have the opportunity to give my opinion, but I will be able to help provide any clarity to the ethics committee with regards to any strange measurements or study designs and stuff like that. The other thing to double check at this stage, if you haven't completed the equipment checklist as requested last week and on Blackboard and multiple times in between, you need to do that as soon as possible. Now, I've seen 16 responses so far, which is a large portion of the students, the SEN students this is. If you are still watching as a GPHN student, you don't need to do this. But if you are a SEN student watching this, you haven't done that and you plan to use the 4th floor labs, you need to do that by the end of today. If you don't do it by the end of the day, I won't be able to reflect your equipment needs to Helen when I meet with her next week. So you've been warned, and we may not be quite sympathetic about you coming to us last minute and asking for stuff. So the last thing to say, if I just politely sort of wheel out of the way here, I just want to remind you all that it is your responsibility to move your project forward. So don't be waiting on your supervisor to do this, because that isn't the way that this works. Again, it's your project, and it's your responsibility to take control of that and decide what needs to be done next. So it's not your supervisors who are going to be chasing you. It's you that should be letting your supervisor know what the next steps are. And if you need some advice on that, that's magic. That's absolutely fine. But the reality of the matter is you need to start driving the projects forward yourself. So if you need to meet with your supervisor, get in touch with them, tell them that you need to meet with them. If you need to get in the lab to check out some equipment, get in touch with Helen, book a slot, get the equipment out of the cupboard and start working with it. If you need some extra training on some specialist pieces of equipment like the Cortexes or any body composition analysis software, any intervention like nutritional intervention type stuff that you need help prepping with, again, Helen will be your first port of call to help with the training arrangements on that. And then your supervisor, if Helen isn't able or isn't available to actually undertake that training for you. So again, just take that. The MSc project is all about making sure that you guys are self-sufficient moving forward with your research project. So start as you mean to go on, be proactive, get your head into your projects and start driving them forwards. Now, moving it on, I think we've got, yes, okay, now, I'm glad Vicky's joined us because she's the one who originally shared this with us, and she's been asking about getting some discounts for you guys. So, just a polite reminder about the continued professional development opportunity that you guys have got with the BDA Centre Register, which is their showcase event on the 17th of May, and it's at Liverpool John Moores University. But I got in touch with the event organisers and managed to find out a little bit more. So, sorry, excuse me. There is an early bird discount available if you sign up before the 7th of April. Now, what I would say is I would be very grateful is if you are planning on going to this event, if you could let me know, so that sorry, excuse me, I'm having a gastrointestinal meltdown here. If you could let me know that you are planning on attending that, they have come back to me with an offer with regards to a group discount per person. So it needs to be a minimum of 5 people is what I would say on that front. So if we get 5 of us together, you will get a discount of somewhere between £5 and £20 on the already discounted student rate. So the student rate is only £70, and if we can get a group like a Westminster Represents kind of group getting together, then we can get an extra discount on top of that. So if you plan to attend, please let me know via email, and I can start collating the numbers together and go from there. The final thing to say is if you are planning attending, why not go for their bite-sized nutrition? Are you up to the challenge? Why would you bother doing this, and what is it? So they're using this kind of idea of these kind of snappy, fast, fast-paced, dynamic presentations where each presenter has 5 minutes to engage the audience in their topic. You're allowed 20 slides, which will move on every 15 seconds throughout the presentation that you give. And the presentation can be on anything as long as it falls under the showcase theme, We Are Sports Nutrition. Now, looking ahead and trying to join the dots together, if you're doing a research project, it might be a good opportunity for you to do a nice little short presentation on We Are Sports Nutrition on your research area of interest, and see if you can capture the attention of the audience and go under this kind of time pressured 15 seconds a slide, 20 slides kind of model. I think it would be good fun to get people in front of the audience. It would be an excellent platform for you guys to get in front of a very well informed nutrition crowd. So if you are planning on doing that, I'm just going to get myself out of the way a second. You can see here, in no more than 100 words, send a summary of your presentation concept to events@bda.uk.com by the 14th of April. And they said just underneath here, we can't wait to hear from you. So if you are planning on doing that, let me know. If you want any advice, speak to your supervisor, speak to me. The more people we get up there, the more people that put in for this, the more likely it is we'll get some of our Westminster MSc students in front of people who can take note of your existence, which is excellent. So moving it on. I'm not sure how many people are still with us in the chat, because again, it's been a bit of a long one. If you are still cruising about in the background, do let me know. And let me know if you're planning attending in the chat as well. Okay, I'm going to move it on. So one of the things I was keen to ensure that you guys had an opportunity to do was, again, reflecting on the mid-semester feedback forms that we got. A lot of you were saying that you felt, I think the response rate for whether you felt supported in post-graduation life, if you like, wasn't that great. And I'm hopefully going to try and address some of those concerns and issues now. And again, this is going to become a bit more of a theme on the Blackboard sites. Once we get out of semester time, we will start posting these types of opportunities, these resources moving forwards. Now, when you sit down and you think, my God, I've absolutely no idea where to even start when it comes to getting a job within the field. And I've got a rough idea through the different modules that I've been sitting about my interests, but how do I fulfill those needs and those interests moving forwards? So I've provided you here with a bunch of resources where you can find some sport and nutrition, or sport or nutrition specific job listings, so that you can start applying or considering what your skill sets are now, so that you can try and make sure that you're as employable as possible when it comes to July, August, September time. So we can see here we've got the Nutrition Society, we've got BASES, which is the British Association for Sport and Exercise Sciences. We've got jobs.ac.uk, which is a higher education specific jobs listing site. We've got Sport England, and we've also got Glambia, who have a graduates program. Now, because of the length of the stream today, I'm not going to click on these and go through them individually, but what I will do is in the description of the video after this has been recorded and on Blackboard, I will list these links, which will take you straight through to the jobs listings sections of each one of these websites. So just to give you a little bit of insight there, the Nutrition Society do a little bit of extra training on nutrition specific jobs, which I think is excellent. You should take a look at. BASES again tends to pick out more sport and exercise physiology, sport and exercise science type jobs specifically, but the nutrition jobs still get posted on there as well, and it's a good one to be aware of. They're very, very specific on the BASES website, so you kind of, once you go on there, the likelihood is there is something that will be of interest to you. Again, the jobs.ec.uk one is for higher education institutions to post listings on. So if you're a university, but you're looking for like a research assistant, or a research associate, or a PhD position, or a funded PhD / applied position, the likelihood is it will be listed on jobs.ac.uk. Now, I might take the opportunity here just to have a quick look at that one, just to give you an example of one and what it looks like. So let me just get it open up here, and I will make sure that I get a screen so that you can actually see it. Just one second. Okay. Okay, not that one. Just bear with me, guys, while I just find the right thing to share. Excellent. Perfect. So I clicked on the jobs.ac.uk website. If we just scroll down a little bit, you can see down here that we've got a sport and leisure section here, and now you can see 48 postings here. Now this ranges all the way through from like prof level all the way through senior lecturer, reader, lecturer for academic specific jobs, but there is also research assistant in there, research associate, and also they universities have started to clock onto the fact that they can put in sport specific roles in there as well. So if they have like an athlete support section of their university, they can definitely post that on there as well. So you can basically have a look through the jobs listings that they've got. You can search and narrow the search criteria by location, which you can do on most standard things. But again, this is very higher education specific, but you can sort of start to see where you've got a research assistant, postdoctoral research associate. Again, the salary here reflects the range of experience you would be expected to bring to that type of role. Stuff like that. So you can start to align whether you feel that your job, whether your current skill set and your current experience aligns with some of that. Rebecca has just come onto the chat there. Let's see if my chat is actually working. Here we go. Excellent. So again, Rebecca's just come on here and said, still here. I think there are 4 people still watching. If you're one of those 4 people, then do let us know. I appreciate it's been a bit of a long one today, but nevertheless, it's still useful stuff to cover. So let me head back over to the big screen and we'll go from there. So if you take the opportunity to have a look at some of these jobs postings and start to have a bit of a look around and a bit of a feel as to what you can find on each of the different ones, they are an excellent starting place. I'm also in discussion with Glanbia Nutrition. Now, Glanbia is a multinational company that hosts and owns lots of different nutrition companies. They also have a sports nutrition specific branch to their portfolio of businesses. So I'm currently discussing with the graduates program that they offer to see what we can get that's a little bit more specific to you guys, and if I can share that a little bit more holistically with the sport and exercise nutrition students. So watch this space a little bit with this one. The likelihood next week is I will put on a different selection of different job sites that you can visit, and I will post these onto the Blackboard sites so that you can find them after the fact, so you don't have to think about which episode you saw it on. So hopefully that will start to be a bit more useful. Again, if you do have some success with this, let me know via email, and we can start sharing that a little bit more widely as we move forward. So hopefully that starts to fill in some of the gap and bridge you from your master's program all the way through to your employment at the end of this, because we need to start thinking about your employment moving forward into the real big wide world. So let me get my slides back up and we can carry on from there. I don't think we've got too much more to cover today. Bless me, excuse me. I'm in a very dusty attic at the moment, so it's absolutely no surprise that I'm suffering a little bit on that front. So I think that's me done. Now, if anyone who's still watching wants me to have a look through more of those job sites, I'm happy to do that. But let me head over to the chat and see if there's any questions outstanding. So if you have any questions with regards to the course, any modules, any assessments that we're doing at the moment, or anything that you need clarification on, now is your time. So do just let me know in the chat. Rebecca, 10 points for staying with it the whole way through. That's an impressive effort, I have to say, so well done. Hopefully your research project preparations are going well. And do let me know if there's anything we can do. But if there's any questions outstanding, or is there anything that I can help with, then now is your time to ask.